Hello and welcome everybody to episode 59 of Comic DNA X Edition number 3, where my good friend Alex Harner and I discuss the classic Stan Lee and Jack Kirby issues. Today we are talking about issue number 3. Alex, it's been a few weeks since we last talked about the X-Men.
It has.
You know,
Get me itch.
it's only troublesome because when I came up with this idea of us talking about X-Men comics, it would be because it would be something simple and easy that we could do regularly and not
Right.
have like 4 week gaps between episodes. And
Right.
here we are, like almost a month away from the last episode. um, in the last episode, I wasn't even with you, so it was even a week before. The last episode, I had some other friends of mine, and we talked about the great book Black Sad. And I should point out,
Yeah,
though, although
I listened to that.
Yeah, you listened to it, so yeah, you'll know that. Although you weren't on the episode, I did mention your name like 4 or 5 times. Uh,
I got some shout outs.
yeah, a couple of shout outs on there. But
I appreciate it.
yeah, we're gonna do this as to the best of our ability, but we're a real Mickey Mouse operation here. I think is a phrase that we've talked about in the past, and
Mickey Mouse operation.
yeah,
We're humans.
we're humans.
We
And,
try. Stuff comes up.
stuff comes up. Been working on some comic stuff.
Yeah.
I actually took the time. I wasn't purposely putting off the podcast. It just scheduling conflicts kept coming up, and I couldn't get any filler episodes. And it was, it is what it is. But I took the opportunity to get a lot of script writing done for some comic stuff that I'm doing. And Alex, I think I'm still haven't made an official announcement yet, and I don't think I'm going to yet. We're just going to keep teasing it. But I think you got some comic art done. You did a little comic book.
A little bit.
A little bit. So
Yeah, if I can keep the momentum up, we'll have a product to share eventually.
if we keep up the same momentum, we might have another page in about 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
I for one, am excited.
An issue in 2 years.
2 years, yeah. But enough about that. Let's. People don't care. People don't care about us and our piddly little problems. They're here to listen to us blather on about the X-Men. And
No doubt.
it's been a little while now. But if I recall, the last 2 issues, we both really liked issue number 1. Even though
Yep.
we poked a little fun at some of the kitschiness of it. It's a little rough in a few places, but it's a pretty good issue. Or actually, I would say it's more than a pretty good issue. I'd say it's a really good issue. I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a great introduction.
Yeah. It's a classic. Issue number 2 was not quite as memorable as issue number 1. It was still kind of enjoyable, though.
Yeah, not as strong, but some interesting characterization moments, especially given, where the X-Men have gone since.
Yeah.
Specifically with Professor Xavier's kind of questionable use of his powers.
Yeah. And it had, of course, the really forgettable villain, the
Vanisher.
Vanisher. Yeah. So many jokes.
Just
that were
vanished
not-
from your memory there.
Exactly.
Oh,
Didn't we make that joke in the last episode? I don't remember. But
probably
Probably,
did. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
it's okay. It's okay.
It's just so good I had to revisit it.
It's a good joke. But anyway,
So
now
good.
now we're moving on to number 3, and I think the way we ended the last episode, which was like a month ago, but the way we ended that was we hope the momentum continues, and we hope we like 3 as much as we've liked 1 and 2. So buckle in for a fun conversation, because I don't know.
Brace yourselves.
We'll see. So I did the plot summary for issue number 2. I think we're going to stick to this alternating duties here. So I'm going to let you take care of the plot summary for issue number 3. Alex, tell me what happens in X-Men number 3.
All right, let's do this. So in X-Men number 3, we start off with another X-Men training session. Professor Xavier's putting the students through their paces when he senses a new mutant, and he sends them out to find this new mutant. He's not entirely sure who it is, so they kind of split up. They go across the city, And ultimately, Cyclops finds this new mutant at a carnival or a circus. And it turns out to be the Blob. He's a really big dude who can withstand being shot by a gun. The bullets just bounce off of him. Nobody can move him. He's super strong. And basically, Cyclops finds him. Jean Grey and Angel catch up. Cyclops says, in not particularly polite terms, hey, buddy, come with us. Professor Xavier wants to talk with you. He's kind of a jerk. And we find out that the Blob is also kind of a jerk. And he's not interested. There's a lot of kind of tough guy talk back and forth. But Jean Grey shows up, and the Blob is intrigued by her girliness and her beauty, as is every guy in this comic so far.
Right.
And he agrees to go talk to Professor Xavier. He gets there. They test him. Xavier says, "We want you to join us." And the Blob promptly says, "No, I'm not interested. You guys are lame." Something to that effect.
It is,
and it blows Xavier's mind.
Right.
He cannot conceive that someone would turn down an offer with the X-Men. Just cannot believe it. And this is where the comic kind of gets out of hand.
Yeah.
Basically, the Blob at this point has seen where they live, and he's learned their secret identities. And because he's not going to join the X-Men, Professor Xavier's immediate response is, "Well, we got to withhold him and wipe his memory." Which I think is
continuing a theme from the previous issue.
Yeah, there's not even a discussion. It's just like Blob says no. Professor Xavier freaks out and says, "Well, we're wiping his memory." As you might imagine, the Blob isn't happy about this. A fight breaks out, and he gets away. From there, he returns to his circus, and at this point, I was kind of feeling bad for the Blob. But at this point, he goes back to the circus and says, "Hey, circus friends, we're gonna go attack the X-Men."
Right.
It gets the plot kind of breaks down a little bit. Basically, they decide they're gonna go. Is it that they want to like steal their stuff?
No,
they want to move on them.
No,
the X-Men move on.
Actually, it's a little understandable actually on the Blob's part. His whole thing is that he knows that Professor X knows that he knows their identity, and he knows that Professor X is going to stop at nothing to get him because he could blab. So he's going to preemptively strike against the X-Men because he knows that they're going to come after him. Which he's not entirely
I guess kind of makes
wrong.
sense.
It makes sense, and he's not wrong because he goes back to the circus and he's all like, we're gonna go strike the X-Men. I'm taking over the circus, and immediately at the circus, one of them looks up and they see Angel, who's doing a recon mission to find the Blob. So
right.
Blob was actually 100% correct. Professor X was going to hunt him down and erase his memory.
Yeah. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
it doesn't paint the X-Men in the best light.
No, definitely not Professor X.
Yeah. So the circus folk march on the mansion. It gets really campy and ridiculous. There's like a full circus attack with trapeze artists and what else? Gorilla. There's like battering rams.
My favorite is the giraffe through the window.
Giraffe. It's very silly, hokey, kids comic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of maybe just an excuse to draw a bunch of colorful, ridiculous things. Basically, in the course of this battle, Professor Xavier wants to wipe all their minds because at this point the Blob has told all of his coworkers about the X-Men, and he needs to use this brain amplification device to do that, and it's not ready. So the X-Men are fighting the circus folk to stall while Professor Xavier gets this thing ready. Yeah. The battle goes back and forth. Ultimately, the X-Men are caught. They then escape. The circus folk bust in on Xavier. His machine is ready. He wipes their memory, and that's the end of the comic.
It all happens pretty fast.
Yeah.
Like that very end bit. It's like it's all like in a page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they like kick the door in, the X-Men kind of show up to stop them. Professor X aims his mind device at them,
And then
and in like 5 panels, the day is saved.
yeah.
The Blob's back at the circus, and everyone's happy. Ta-da!
Yeah, and there's kind of like this. It's sort of it's a happy ending, kind of.
Kind of. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. So, oh yeah, I think that's as concise as you could be with this issue.
Yeah.
So, Alex, first impressions, gut feelings.
It's kind of a stupid issue.
Stupid is kind of the word. Yeah.
It's kind of stupid.
It's stupid. There's so many, and the thing is it's not just like it's not like the previous issue where we were like it's a pretty good issue, just the villain's really dumb. Like there's a lot of stupid things going on in this issue, like quite a bit.
It's really hard to justify the character's actions, or the hero's actions.
Yeah.
And so then it just becomes a lot of filler and a circus fight.
Well, I mean, let's just talk about let's just talk about how Professor X, the guy whose mutant power is that he can read people's minds, is completely shocked that the Blob won't join the team.
Right.
Isn't that like the whole point of his powers? Isn't that what makes him so like such a great leader, and how he was able to keep the X-Men a secret? And then he just invites this guy into their house and tells them all their secrets, assuming that he's going to join them. The whole point of his power is that he would know like what the guy's intentions are.
And if for some reason he wouldn't know, why would he just like reveal everything to this guy and make this assumption?
Exactly.
He just comes across as a buffoon with inconsistent powers.
Yeah, exactly. It's laughably stupid. Like, really stupid. And I don't know, we talked in previous issues kind of about the breakdown in who was doing the majority of the writing, like, because it's a real team effort between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, the way these comics were made. Most of the writing you can say was Jack Kirby. He's the one who came up with the plots. He's the one who drew it all. And then, maybe based off of, a couple of paragraphs of an idea by Stan Lee, here's the new character I want to introduce, make him look like this. And, they get together and they fight, and then the X-Men win. Something to that effect. And then then Jack Kirby's the one who would actually draw the whole thing, and then Stan Lee would go back and add all the narration and the character dialogue and whatnot. But this is like so bad on like every level. Like it's
Yeah, it doesn't come together in a way where you care about the plight of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of makes it hard to like.
So I don't want to kind of keep harping on like about like it's bad, it's dumb, it's bad. So let's hit like a bullet point list of like what's really terrible. So I think number one, like the worst thing about it is the whole plot point. The driving plot point is that Professor X is stupid and just assumes that the Blob will join the team, and then he doesn't. And that's like the whole issue is built around that. So that's just awful. We kind of talked about that. I think anybody who's casually read the X-Men would think that that's really bad. Like it just wouldn't make sense for Professor X. And it's the kind of thing that it just kind of shows I want to say like just the immaturity of the book at this point. Many years later, decades later, when Chris Claremont is writing the book, and he has Professor X trying to recruit new characters to the X-Men, and it's with a lot more finesse. Like they represent themselves in a different way. They don't just have Cyclops barge into somebody's house and say, hey jerk, you ever hear of the X-Men? I'm one of them. Come join us. There's a little bit more like they represent themselves as like a different group or a boarding school or whatnot, and
right.
I think of like Kitty Pryde, where Professor X did sort of use his powers to encourage her parents to send her to his boarding school, which was really a training hall for mutants. There's that whole thing. That is completely different than what's going on here. This is just like really base character interaction. I don't know. It's like beyond childish. Like it's stupid. Like it doesn't even make sense for the two issues where they've established the characters.
Right. Like I want to say that this is for a younger audience, and so it's a simple plot. But I don't think that even really holds up because it's not. If it's meant to be simple, it could be simpler. It's like he's
it's like needlessly.
Stan Lee, I suppose,
yeah.
trying to create some drama and in the process creating something that's just kind of it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't. Yeah. So there's like these glaring. I don't even know if you can call them plot holes. It's just character inconsistencies. Like I think you said, the character motivations are just awful. So there's that. I mean, that just. Would you say that alone basically ruins the issue in terms of, like, can this issue, anything in this issue redeem that whole thing?
Oh, I guess if there was something really extraordinary, it would at least make the issue kind of more fun. Mm-hmm. There are some good things in this issue, but I don't think there's anything really extraordinary, and as such, it's just really hard to care about the issue because the setup. Yeah. You're never invested. At least I was never invested. Yeah,
I think that's another good point. That brings up to like another thing that I think makes this issue not great is I think that this is not one of Jack Kirby's strongest issues. I think for the most part, like we talked about the silliness of the circus attacking the X-Mansion, and while there are some nice kitschy panels, I'm not denying the fun, the silliness of it. Like there is some incredible silliness. Like my favorite,
a giraffe eats Iceman's ice cream.
My favorite would be the giraffe eating Iceman's sundae, just sticking its head in the window. And there's that. There's, like you said, like there's trapeze artists. Like they just shoot wires to the, so there's high wires and
they actually like start to build their construction or their circus, their platforms.
Yeah.
Like in the yard of of the mansion, so that they can do like tricks off of them.
It's like they're literally building the circus around the mansion to, I don't know. And then there's animals. Beast fights a gorilla. There's the Cyclops. The elephant charges at him. There's a cowboy doing lasso tricks. There's a lot of silliness. Human cannonballs, but
they get those in there.
Yeah, they get a lot of people, but it's none of it is. I feel like maybe this is a little unfair, but I feel like it's not as exciting as it should be, and I think this kind of comes from Jack Kirby being really stuck to the grid format. Like he doesn't have a chance to really like stretch his wings, spread his wings, and kind of stretch out and do a lot of like big action pages. Like all of this stuff that we're talking about sounds silly and it sounds like it could be really fun and great looking, but it's all stuck inside of a 6-panel grid. Yeah. And I think that it kind of loses some of the excitement in that. And like so, it is silly.
I think there's a lack of hierarchy in most of these pages. Like it's very, all the panels are the same size.
Yeah.
Nothing really stands out. Nothing. There's a scene where Cyclops shoots an elephant across the yard,
right.
And that's pretty cool.
It is, yeah.
Especially if I was a little kid and like I liked Cyclops, like that would be like a measure of his power. Like he's so strong he could shoot an elephant.
A rampaging
and it flew across
elephant.
the yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's a fun thing, especially in a kid's comic. But it gets just like a sixth of the page, and it's not a particularly interesting panel.
Yeah.
I mean, you understand that the elephant's getting zapped, but it's not as exciting as Kirby is capable of.
Right. I wouldn't even say it's as exciting as anything that was in the previous 2 issues,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's pretty tough. Cyclops blasting an elephant across the yard.
Yeah.
Not as exciting as the Vanisher.
To his credit, there are a lot of things in all of these panels.
Yeah.
Like, he's throwing a lot of stuff out there, but the art doesn't emphasize it in a way that makes it exceptional.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that this is a thing that I want to. I mean, to be charitable, I would just say deadlines. It's
Yeah.
Kirby's working on monthly books, multiple monthly books.
It's just easier to set the grid out and fill it with pictures and,
Exactly.
and move on to the next thing. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So there's that. I don't think it's the most exciting looking of all of the. Well, I mean, of the three that we've read so far, I actually think that the other two were just, I don't know, just had more energy to them, which is, like I said, that feels weird to say when you're talking about a circus attacking the X-Men.
Right.
But, yeah, so, I don't know. But, that's not to say that the art is all bad. Because I do think that there's still some nice Kirby... There's some really nice Kirby art in this issue. And there's some nice choice panels.
Sure. I really... I'm noticing as I'm looking through these again, I like how he handled Jean Grey's powers on more than one occasion.
Yes. I was actually going to say that. I think she was... Like, we talked about how in the previous issue, Beast was kind of the breakout character. Like, he was the one who stole the show, as it were, out of the team. And we'll talk to Beast. We'll talk about Beast a little bit more in this issue. I think that they kept that going, but I do think that Jean Grey is kind of the character that kind of broke out in this issue. And even though she doesn't do a whole lot, I like I particularly like the scene at the end when the X-Men are all they're defeated, and the circus have all tied him up. The circus folks have tied him up, and Professor X is able to use his mental powers to communicate with Jean Grey and help her use her powers to save the rest of the X-Men. I really like that sequence, actually. I thought that was one of the better looking sequences in the book, and it also it was also a good character building sequence. Like, it wasn't just a silly fight. Like, it was
right.
It was
it's
nice.
It's a good it's very much a sequence. It's like 5 or 6 panels that showcase what she's capable of and make her seem cooler.
Yeah.
And it's laid out in a very, very methodical, readable way, which is cool. And you see, it's less cool earlier in the issue, but there's at the beginning when they're training in the danger room, she gets 4 panels too, where she's moving these shapes around.
Yeah.
Which maybe the panels aren't the most exciting thing, but they're kind of curious. It's very much a focus on how she uses her powers.
Right.
She's moving these blocks through these abstract hoops and stuff.
Professor X's weird modern art coat rack.
Yeah.
This is the beauty of the 60s danger room, which is it's just a giant room full of missiles and secret pits and weird contraptions that are designed specifically for one person's mutant powers. And yeah, he's got that rack that Jean Grey has to just move the block through and manipulate the block to fit through the different shapes. It's like a child's toy, where they had to put this triangle in the triangle shape and the square in the square shape and whatever. But
right. But there's 4 panels dedicated to it.
Yeah, there is.
Which just creates that sense of sequence where you're seeing something unfold and you become a little more invested in it versus a panel of the human cannonball and then a panel of a cowboy.
Right. And
that's interesting stuff, but there's no connection between panels.
And with all of that, it is also it's good structure for the issue. Because this is something that's set up early on. Professor X is teaching her how to use her powers and, manipulate and maneuver stuff. So he's teaching her the importance of her dexterity to be able to move this block carefully. And then later on, what does she have to do? She has to carefully maneuver a knife to cut through the ropes that are binding her without stabbing herself in the back. All right, that's clever.
It's kind of good setup.
That's foreshadowing, and that's a good setup. So. It's we were really dogging on this issue because the foundational plot doesn't make any sense, but there is still it is still structured. Jack Kirby is the master, and he knows how to structure a story,
Sure.
And he set it up that.
Yeah, I think in terms of just storytelling, Jack Kirby's pretty solid. A little bland here, but
Yeah.
pretty solid. It's Stanley's script that adds some of the stupid.
Oh man, so Stanley's script. Let's just talk about that. Stanley can be kind of the punching bag of the comic book industry, depending on who you're talking to. I know everybody loves Stanley. I myself, I am fond of Stanley. I'll just say this: I like Stanley.
Sure.
I like what he did for comics, but
Yeah,
my God,
I also,
I have
props to Stanley.
Props to Stanley. I have a soft spot for him. But my God, if I don't basically agree with like every negative thing that's been said about him, and there's been a lot.
This is a good showcase of those negative things.
It is because even we're not even talking about the editorial negative things about it. Like him taking credit for all of Jack Kirby's ideas and whatnot. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about his writing style. Oh my goodness, this issue. So it's really overwritten. But in the way that like all of these issues are overwritten, like at the time, the way all comics were overwritten. But this one has some really choice panels that are overwritten. And let's just go ahead.
Maybe the most controversial
exactly
panel in all of X history.
Let's just go ahead and get it out there. This is one of those like X-Men urban legends kind of mythical panels that it was just thrown out there in this issue, and I'm pretty positive it is something that has never been touched on ever again. And that I'm talking, of course, of the panel that reveals Professor X has hidden romantic feelings for Jean Grey. And boy howdy is it a doozy of a panel. So there's a lot to break down here. Well, because like
so much.
There's a lot to break down because at this point it's I think it is important to understand, especially when we're talking about like in terms of Stanley's writing and like how he's writing the book. Jean Grey is the girl on the team. She is the female. And as a result, all of the guys who admittedly are teenagers, all of the guys are just chasing after her all the time. They're always flirting with her. Everybody's, vying for her attention. And I'm just going to go ahead and assume that's how it was in the 60s. I've talked to old people before, and they basically confirmed that.
The kids didn't have as many distractions, so
exactly.
The guys should chase girls all the time. That's all there was to do.
But apparently that was a thing where like girls would date multiple guys at the same time. Like it's weird to think about, but like that's what dating was.
Wait. You got grandparents who were telling you these things?
I do. Maybe. Look, I'm telling you, my family is not a progressive swinging family. Let me tell you. But that's how it was done back in ye olden days. But dating was different than it is now. But anyway, the point is, the way the sequence goes in this issue too is this whole page. They're getting set up to go look for the mutant that Professor X has identified. So they all got to change into their street clothes to go out. And the first person that's ready gets to be the one to escort Jean, right? So Beast is kind of taunting Angel, and they're all kind of there's a little bickering back and forth. And even our little gay friend Iceman gets in on the action. Maybe he's not so gay after all, because he is quick to beat them all to be the first one to take out Jean Grey. This is a reference, of course, to the first episode, the first issue, where Alex and I, when we joked about the panel that sets precedent for him being revealed as being gay in current modern times. They've revealed that Iceman is gay. That's
in issue 1. He just doesn't understand what the big deal is about girls.
Exactly. He's just not interested in girls. I think, of course, that the intention was that he's young, but I guess you could also spin that he's gay. But it's silly either way. But that's neither here nor there for our discussion. What we're talking about, Professor X, and we have the setup where they're all wanting to take out Jean Grey. And Beast and Iceman and Angel are all, quarreling and trying to one-up each other. And not Professor X, Cyclops is sulking behind and you have that thought bubble of him talking about how Jean Grey is like his one true love of all the girls.
It's such ridiculous drama.
It's so over the top, and he's the one girl that he'd give his heart to, but he doesn't dare, not while he possesses his dread power, which is another
dread power.
Dread power, which is another theme I think we'll kind of touch on in a second when we talk about the rest of the characters. So Cyclops is really sulky and mopey in this issue. So we have that whole thing where he's upset because he loves Jean Grey so much, but he wouldn't dare go near her or admit it because, too dangerous. And
it's a pretty common Stan Lee trope.
It's a common superhero thing.
Like
that's like the foundation of all superhero drama. A superhero is trying to have a normal life, but he knows that he can't
reveal this burden. Sure. Standard
superhero stuff. It's appropriate for Cyclops. I mean, it's over the top and it's melodramatic. I agree, but I mean, it's appropriate for the character for what they're setting up here. But then, then we get just 2 panels later. Jean Grey and the rest they're all assembling, and Jean Grey and Cyclops and Beast and Professor X are all in the panel, and we have Professor X giving the almost exact same internal monologue about how he is the one who's in love with Jean Grey, but he can never tell her, and he has no right.
No right. Not while I'm the leader of the X-Men and confined to this chair.
And confined to the wheelchair. That's an important thing, because what that means is he doesn't think he's good enough for her. Because it wouldn't be fair to ask her to marry a cripple.
Never mind that he's twice her age and her teacher.
Right, I know. And he has this, weird position of authority over her. No, well, I mean, he does say that while he's leader of the X-Men. I guess that that kind of all gets bumped up in there. But also confined to the wheelchair. That's exactly the same as Cyclops' dread power. It's this idea that it's not fair to the girl to ask her to get romantically involved with somebody that could hurt her. She'd be better off being with somebody else.
So much angst.
Yeah, there's
so
all
much
this
drama.
Angst and drama and true love. They love her so much that they'll let her go be happy with someone else. Oh my God,
it's terrible.
Professor X
Truly,
being in love with Jean
truly
Grey.
awful.
That, I don't know. I mean, so we talked about the character motivation of Professor X being dumbfounded by the Blob, not wanting to join the X-Men. Is this worse than that? Professor X being in love with Jean Grey?
I think it is, but it doesn't drive the whole issue. It's like this weird panel that they quickly move away from.
Yeah, it's a single isolated panel that never gets touched on ever again. But it's there forever.
Which is good.
Which is good. Yeah, it's
so he fails to establish a motivation for the characters, the story,
right.
And he throws this in just totally
it's such
stupid drama.
Forced drama. And again, kind of going with what we talk about, the work style of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. I mean, I don't know. I'm not privy to any behind-the-scenes information. But this just looks like a panel where Jack Kirby just drew, similar to what we talked about in that Iceman panel in issue 1, where Jack Kirby just drew the panel with the characters in it, and you interpret it a certain way. Maybe not necessarily the way he intended it to be interpreted. But, like, Professor X is in the panel, and he's lighting up his pipe. And there's space there, which Stan Lee took to mean, fit some dialogue in there. Have Professor X thinking about, how he's concerned for his students, or, he hopes they do okay, or he hopes that they can, keep control of their powers while they go on this mission. But Stan Lee has to go for that low-hanging fruit. He has to go for that extra mile of more...
Well, every other character's in love with her.
Exactly. More relationship drama. It's so bad on so many levels. Like, not even just because it doesn't make sense for the character. It's just awful. I mean, I guess if you wanted to tell a story about a teacher being in love with his student, there's a story there that you could tell. Right? Like, if they wanted to...
Sure.
If they wanted to take Professor X in that direction. I don't think that's the direction they would want to take Professor X in, but let's be honest, this is issue number 3, and Stanley's just winging it this whole time.
Just
you know what
throwing
I mean?
stuff out there to
exactly.
to keep readers wondering.
Exactly. Just keeping readers wondering. And if they wanted to pick up on the, Professor X in love with his student, maybe that's something they'll work, to address in the future. But I can't imagine it was ever like any kind of intent. Initially.
I kind of feel like the comic went to print and someone, maybe Jack Kirby, maybe someone else said, Stan, I think we should move away from that one. And he probably said, yeah, you're probably right.
Okay.
And then
no
they
problem.
did.
And then they never talked about it ever again. But even if talking about how like it's awkward and weird, it's also really bad in the context of the composition of the page. Because as I just said, it's just like repeating what Cyclops was already going through. Like, you already have the character doing that. You don't need another character doing the exact same thing. It's dull and repetitive. That's, I think, I don't know, maybe I'm more offended by that. Like it's...
Well, unless his point is that just everyone loves Jean. I mean, that seems to be her only...
Well, that's obviously the point. Everybody loves
Jean.
Yeah, defining characteristic is...
So you're just going to repeat it with every character? Yeah. I mean, it does seem boring, but...
Well, I will say that does make her boring, too, if that's the only thing that you can do with her. Which, thankfully,
right.
Near the end of the issue, they...
she does something. She has, yeah.
But let's. I mean, I'm gonna follow through with my train of thought here. So we see that the Professor X Jean Grey thing was set up. They have their moment in the training where he's teaching her how to use her powers, and then later on she has to use her powers, and thanks to her training and his expert guidance, she's able to save the team, right? Now, if you were really wanting to do some drama about Professor X being in love with her, that would be something that would come into play at the end of the issue. Because if you've already established that the climax of the issue is going to be him trying to work with her, but it's not. It plays no way at all into the plot at the end. So it's like set up that's not actually intended to work in this issue at all. It's just thrown in there. Maybe they'll get picked up on at some point, maybe not. But it's not the same as the Danger Room sequence, which is clearly establishing Professor X training her how to use her telekinetic powers, acutely, and then later on she does, and that's the intent of the story. The whole him in love with her thing is just a one-off, try to cram in as much drama as possible.
Right.
Just awful. Just so bad.
All right, so talked about a lot of bad things.
We did. Let's.
What do you think the issue does well? Or
okay.
I mean, we talked about the Jean Grey sequence with the telekinetic powers.
Let's bring things up a little bit. Let's talk about. We talked about Jean Grey. I thought that was good. I mentioned earlier we were going to talk about some of the other characters and their. I specifically mentioned Beast. I think Beast does well in this issue, and I think that actually Beast does very well in this issue. Maybe more than Jean Grey, but I think that it's just kind of a continuation of the previous issue, in that he is clearly, I would say he's Jack Kirby's favorite character. Even though he's not necessarily the most visually stunning, like all the characters have like this visual quirk. Angel has the wings, Cyclops has the visor with energy blasts shooting out of it. Iceman is the big, snowman looking goofball. Even Jean Grey at least is a girl and and has red hair, She's a girl.
She's different than the others.
That makes her different.
Makes her stand out.
And Beast is just kind of a big guy, He's basically like I mentioned this earlier. I drew this parallel. He's like kind of like the Thing. He's just kind of a big bulky lunk of a guy.
Big tough guy.
Yeah. But this is certainly the issue where he breaks out in terms of his characterization. We talked a bit.
Yes.
We talked a bit before about how the Beast we know and love was not just a big burly beast, but also incredibly super nerd smart. Big guy who talks with big words, like you need a thesaurus to understand what he's saying. and that is 100% on display in this issue.
Yep, for the first time.
For the first time, yeah. It's not like that. Like we talked about that in the first issue. Beast is basically like the Thing. Like he even talks like the Thing.
Right.
Like he's got the the
Right.
used guys kind of attitude.
Just seems like a tough guy.
Yeah, tough guy. And then all of a sudden, this issue has Beast, speaking with a thesaurus. Although I admit it's a most unwarranted cognomen for one as scholarly, as refined as I fancy myself to be, there's that kind of stuff going on. So Stanley broke out the thesaurus for his Beast dialogue, but also I don't know who to lay the credit to, but Jack Kirby completely sells it in the art too. It's not just something that was added on in the dialogue, because we get that beautiful panel, and I will go ahead and say that this is going to be my favorite panel of the issue. I know in previous issues, my favorite panel was something that was kitschy or silly or goofy, something that could only exist in a 60s comic. But honestly, I think my favorite panel of this issue is when Beast is relaxing in his dorm, reading advanced calculus, holding the book with his foot while he's chewing on a pencil tip, and he's wearing glasses, which I think this is the first time he's ever been shown wearing glasses. And he's got his notepad, and he's clearly a studious type of person. And he has his shirt off, so he's still, big, tough, burly Beast. But
it's a really great single panel summation of the character, or the direction they want the character to go in.
Yeah, 100%. And
he's big, he's tough, but he also is very smart.
He's really smart.
He's those two, that dichotomy of beastly guy.
And he's kind of I was going to say, and I think what makes it so good, like you said, it's that juxtaposition of him being a big, he's a big, strong, beastly looking guy, but he's also really smart, scholarly, and maybe even sensitive, dare I say. And that sets the precedent, which is something that runs consistently through the X-Men, which is not judging a book by its cover. Like the juxtaposition of a character's outward appearance versus their personality, which ties into the whole foundation theme. It's why people are able to get all the much larger themes out of the X-Men. Why they talk about the importance about how X-Men combats racism, and its ties to that, and why people like that. And I really think that Beast here on display is just selling it, because it's like we said, this is a guy who visually he's the big dumb lout, but he's actually really smart. And although you would think he's some kind of big big scary guy, he's not. And that's the sort of that's that juxtaposition, and that's something that you see played out through almost every other character that's introduced into the X-Men since then. I mean, that's Nightcrawler's whole thing. He looks like a demon, but he's actually really theological and spiritual, and things like that.
Right.
And we kind of talked about that in previous issues. We were wondering when that would happen. Like, when does Beast really develop? And it's in the third issue. I mean, it's like this is the character that we know and love. So I do think that that's really important, and I do think that speaks to the appeal of these issues at the time. Even though we're talking about just the junkiest, stupidest plot and kind of a pretty uninspired story overall, uninspired issue overall. But the characterization is there.
Yeah, I mean, you can see Beast is very likable in this issue, and you can see how it is the foundation for how he would continue to be likable and become a favorite character and end up joining the Avengers and
exactly.
return to the X-Men.
Reading these issues, it's clear why after the X-Men stopped publishing for like 10 years, why Beast was the character that stuck around in the Marvel Universe, showing up in other books, like the Avengers, because he is the most likable character. And I think it's pretty clear that he's Jack Kirby's
So
favorite.
he's unique too.
He's unique, yeah, exactly. He is something that's different from other superheroes. He's got that thing going for him. But I think he's just Jack Kirby's favorite character to draw because he's the most visually exciting.
He's always jumping around.
There's
lots of jumping.
Yeah, lots of jumping.
Lots of jumping lines,
but
lots of arcs.
Yeah, exactly. His acrobatics,
Yeah.
Because you look at the other characters and Angel's pretty dull. He's usually just frozen in a hovering position up and far off in the distance in the sky. That's what we see of Angel.
Right.
And Cyclops, I think Cyclops actually is pretty visually exciting whenever you see him using his powers, but he's pretty scared to use them because they're so dangerous. So he doesn't use them all the time.
Dread power.
Dread power. So let's go there. Let's talk a little bit about Cyclops' characterization in this issue.
Mm-hmm. You get some more of the mopiness.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How would you say it lines up with traditionally what we think of Cyclops?
I think it's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
I think that is this. Despite this not being the strongest issue plot-wise, I think the characters have been pretty consistently the X-Men or the foundation for what we know as the X-Men.
Yeah.
You could say that Beast suddenly having more of a vocabulary in this issue is a little bit of a curveball, but it wasn't. It's not so out of left field as to be jarring. It's just we're getting to know the characters better, and we find out that he reads calculus.
It doesn't negate anything in the previous issues. It's just a little layer added
just
on.
building on it.
Yeah, building. Yeah. Clearly building on what was there.
Yeah, I think Cyclops' mopiness is clearly on display in this issue, and it's obviously something that will continue as we move forward.
Right.
He doesn't do all that much other than that.
He really
dread power.
He really doesn't.
He's kind of a jerk.
Yeah. I would say my contender for my other favorite panel is the big reveal in page 2 where Professor X is concerned about Cyclops, which by the way, I should also point out this is the first time that he addresses him as Scott. Remember we joked about how in the first issue he was Slim Summers, never Scott. I believe this is the first time where you get his first name for real. It's Scott, and Professor X has that beautiful. You are probably Scott. You are probably the most powerful of all my X-Men. Yet you always seem so grim, so unsmiling, not like the others. This distresses me. Poor Professor X. And Cyclops is just, he's worried about the awesome power in his eyes. If he should ever forget to shield them, anything might happen. And sometimes I wish I were not Cyclops. And it just has that awesome illustration of him standing there, head cocked a little bit with his hands on his waist, and Jean Grey's kind of climbing on him, or not climbing on him, but addressing him, and she's got her hands on him. That's a thing. That's a thing that women do when they talk to people.
He's very macho looking.
Oh,
and
he's so macho.
Clearly, the girl who's hand on shoulder, hand on arm.
Yeah.
It's kind of a silly panel.
It's a silly panel, but he looks pretty macho. It's full on Cyclops is. He's a tough guy, but he's also sensitive because he's concerned about his dread power.
About his dread power. I'm gonna keep reminding everyone of his dread power.
It's funny.
Damn my dread power. Yeah.
But
what are you gonna do?
But yeah, so that's the running theme in this issue. Cyclops' mopiness, boy, because he's even all of that carries over to his meeting with the Blob, which we haven't really talked about the Blob yet, much really as a character. So Cyclops is the one who finds the Blob, and Cyclops just kind of immediately doesn't like him, and he's just kind of he eyeballs him. Cyclops sizes him up.
Well done.
Yeah,
see what you did there.
Yeah, and he doesn't like his manners. He doesn't like the way the Blob's a bit of a lout. He's a creep. He's boorish.
Yeah, he's clearly a guy who's in it for the money. He smokes a big cigar.
Yeah.
He's not particularly polite.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
he's not
but
a teenager.
Cyclops doesn't attempt to. No, he's clearly an older guy.
Yeah.
But Cyclops doesn't attempt to make peace or
Right.
Establish some kindness. He comes in and he's pretty much immediately, trying to be the big dog.
Yeah. There's this machismo where they're trying to, you get two
Sure.
alphas in a room and they start going at each other instinctively.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the Blob is like a huge unlikable oaf, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess he's pretty powerful. And I guess the character is pretty consistent the way he's been portrayed through the years. Just, a big, powerful oaf.
Yeah, he's not particularly deep.
I guess that's the catch.
I don't know much about the Blob if he's fleshed out in later issues, but in this one,
he eventually,
pretty much what you see is what you get.
He becomes like a recurring member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and that's pretty much who he is. But I think he works as a villain. I think the only thing he has going against him is that he's not the most visually stunning.
No,
he's just.
He's
a big fat guy in his underwear.
Yeah.
But I guess he's got that little bit of a visual quirk, like the whole, like he's unmovable and the bullets bounce off of him, kind of a thing.
Well, he doesn't look like the characters that are around him.
That's true.
He is this guy, this large man running around in his underwear, so he definitely stands out.
Yeah.
It's not the most exciting look. It's not as cool as Magneto's cape and helmet, or
right.
It's arguably a better look than the Vanishers.
I will agree to that. It is at least in its simplicity a better look than the Vanishers. Because the Vanisher went in the opposite direction. Yeah, the Vanishers was so complex as to be confusing. Like you couldn't figure out what the heck was going on with that costume. Blob, there's not much to get with the Blob, and that's kind of refreshing.
Yeah. I'd say likewise, not in terms of visual design, but in terms of their characters in this issue. Angel and Iceman are pretty one note.
Yeah, they don't really do a whole lot.
Iceman's kind of funny, and Angel's wealthy and arrogant. I guess
he's kind of a smooth talker. I guess
I guess, but it's not even particularly well developed or fun or interesting. It's just kind of like you get your line and
your one panel where somebody talks about how that character is the way they are.
Right.
Where they're
just so everyone's clear that this is the role they're playing, and then we kind of move on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would seem like Beast is the standout. Jean Grey has some interesting sequences. Cyclops it continues to establish that the extent of his mopiness and his dread power, and then otherwise,
and Professor X
what you see is what you get.
Professor X is a big incompetent weirdo.
Yeah, and Professor X is where the issue fails.
Yeah, the whole thing revolves around him, and it just doesn't make sense. So yeah, just not a very impressive issue, but
no.
But I think we can take solace in the fact that there is some good characterization in it. Like we said, this is the issue that establishes Beast, and I think that's. I guess there's something to be said for that,
Yeah. Beast is cool.
Yeah, Beast is cool. I like Beast a lot.
That direction was well liked, and it stuck, and it continues to stick.
Right. And I think that's kind of the important thing too about the way, just the nature of the way comics work, and we talk about the mythology. Like you and I are talking about the X-Men as this thing that's existed for 50 years, and it's got all of these decades of stories, not just in comics, but now you have the movies and cartoons and all this other stuff, video games even, and it kind of all ties into each other to create the almost like the mythology, what I'm trying to think of, like almost like more like the representations of the characters. Like the way you think of the characters is sort of an amalgam of all the different things that has been repeated through the years, not necessarily through specific stories. And the way they worked is, you'd have these issues that would be coming out at the time, and you'd put out it's a lot of silly stuff. I mean, there's a lot of silly stuff going on in this issue, but you react to what works and you stick with it and you keep doing it. And then over the years, everybody remembers the thing that is good that keeps getting done over and over again. And that's your perception then of the characters or the mythology, as it were. Which is why nobody ever addresses Professor X's hidden feelings for Jean Grey. Because it's terrible.
That was not reinforced over the years. Exactly. That was quickly moved away from.
Quickly discarded. But Cyclops' mopiness...
It's also probably why Wolverine stories in the future aren't going to talk about Romulus a lot. I mean, we'll see.
Oh, you want to make that call? I mean, because I'll agree with you. I just think that's a little more modern than we necessarily need to get into for this podcast.
Sorry, I was like kind of out of left field.
Yeah.
The point is, there are things that reinforce what people enjoy and what make the characters great and timeless, and there are things that are quickly forgotten and swept under the rug.
And there's a lot of quickly forgotten stuff in this issue, but there are some stuff that establish things that get repeated through the years, through the ages, even.
Through the ages.
So I don't know. I still think it's a bad issue. I mean, it's just. I don't know. I guess I could recommend to somebody to read it just for the kitschiness of it, but it's not a particularly entertaining issue. And even like the good things that we're talking about are such small little character moments. Like, it's not like the whole issue is about how cool Beast is.
No, there's a lot of pages of just human cannonballs and
right, trapeze artists.
Just kind of
cowboys and
yeah, it's all over the place.
Yeah, it is. So we didn't do this for the previous issue, and I feel really bad. But we did the how many Magneto helmets out of 5 would you give the first issue? So how many Blob jowls would you give the third issue?
Blob jowls out of 5.
Out of 5.
I think I'd give it 1, maybe 2 for Beast and maybe the cool Jean Grey sequence. Otherwise, there's not much to this comic that I recommend.
I'll give it. I'll give it 1.5. I'll stick with you. 1.5.
Okay.
Just only because it establishes Beast. That's what it's getting. Otherwise, this would be the most completely forgettable issue.
Sure.
The Jean Grey stuff. The Jean Grey stuff works in sense of storytelling, but I think it's the Beast that really kind of is something that has resonated through, the future issues.
Okay. So those brief Beast moments, which are
they're
a very small percentage of the overall comic.
I do like
save it from a 0 rating.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Beast saves it from a 0. I do like the few panels of Beast fighting the acrobats. That's because again, we talk about Jack Kirby's art. That's the most visually exciting thing in this issue, which is a little disappointing because you would think Cyclops blasting an elephant would be more exciting, but it's just not.
It's not really.
It's really not.
Yeah. Bummer.
Well, I think that's about all we could say about this issue without, rambling around in circles and repeating ourselves and talking about how awful Professor X being in love with Jean Grey is. We don't really need to harp on that.
Truly horrible.
Just awful. So thanks everybody for listening. We are going to be back next week with another episode. I'm making this promise now, so Alex, don't get any plans going because we're coming back for another one. We're going to talk about issue 4. All right. You can find episodes of this very podcast, Comic DNA, at comicdna.podbean.com. You can also find us on YouTube, our channel Comic DNA on YouTube, and you can find me on Facebook, Aaron Walther on Facebook, and you can find me on Twitter at AA Walther on Twitter. And you can find comics that I write at newhavencomics.com and thebirdlander.com. That's the most recent comic that I've done with my good friend, artist Ed Bickford, who was just on the previous podcast. If you listen to that one, you probably heard us talk about the Birdlander quite a bit. Or not. I actually don't remember if we did, but it's out there. And, keep listening. Hopefully soon I might have some announcements to make about Alex's big comic debut. But we're going to keep it under our hat for now because, I don't know, I'm lazy. I don't have anything to say. But, Alex, anything you want to end on?
Fair enough. No, I think I'm good.
Well,
next week,
all right.
number 4.
X-Men number 4. Let's hope it can keep this momentum going. That at least a fine character moment. That's all I ask.
There we go.
Thanks everybody for listening, and we will see you all next time.